you were either leading or following Moses through the wilderness.
Right. Yeah. So, yes. So off to church. So yeah, a funny story about Moses. So because of my experience in the 100-mile wilderness, crossing these creeks, so I told her I just parted the water.
Yes.
So I took the trail named Moses.
Is there anything better than a trip getting ready? Nope. For a long journey where our podcast released a new epi, searching for a fade fiend, a new fixation. Giving this a subscribe is the same sensation. Started with the day ones, they gave us fuel to support the season. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here for a reason. Notification bells, have some friends, all to let you know. Check your Bluetooth, connect, talking with Donato.
Welcome in, everyone. This is Talking with Donato. Really appreciate everyone tuning in today. This is episode 47. Plateaus are the highest form of flattery. That's the name of this podcast. And our guest today is Brad Brannon. Brad, how the heck are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Donato. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that introduction. Just really enjoying it out here in East Alabama. Just came back from my kids' wrestling match. So I think I had more fun watching them than they had fun participating. But maybe they learned something. So yeah, it's always good kind of hanging out with the wrestlers. It's we definitely enjoy doing hard things out here, and wrestling is besides golf maybe is the hardest sport in my view. So
it's a great sport. I like to call it the original martial art. I was a wrestler in high school myself, and I've got my oldest. I got her in wrestling, and she does pretty good. So we have that in common. I spent a little time in Alabama, Brad. I was in Huntsville, Alabama, and for our listeners, that's called the Tennessee Valley. And Brad, I'm going to tell you, that Tennessee Valley was amazing for me. I drove, had like a holiday break. I drove my first ever vehicle I purchased, which was a Ford Mustang. I drove it from Huntsville up through the Smokies and right on into Virginia. It was an amazing time. Something tells me you may know a little bit about some of that area I just mentioned.
Sure. Yeah. I've got some friends up in Hunts Vegas up there, and yeah, it's a beautiful area. So a little bit of family up there too. Really enjoy going up there and visiting, and definitely just came out of the Smokies not too long ago. But I was on foot. Yeah. So, and then up to Virginia. Yeah.
A little more hardcore than my little Mustang LX. So it was a Fox body, but you know what? I can't save this. Nothing sounds as cool as that. We're gonna get right into it. So for our listeners, if some of you may know Brad already, and you probably know what he did, and for those who don't know, Brad, something tells me that your boots were made for walking, and that's just what you did. You took the Appalachian Trail? Yeah,
the whole thing. So I started on June 10th up in Maine, and I walked down to Georgia. It took me about 5 months. So it's a total of 2,200 miles, just about. So, yeah.
Okay, well, he's here. We have him cornered, listeners. We're going to get into this because I've got a million questions. Brad, I hope you took a little energy drink, something, because I'm about to load up on you.
ready to go, Donato. Yeah, we're past after midnight, but I'm still ready to go. So
okay. So the first thing, Brad, what got into you? I got to know just where did this come about? Did you know someone that already did it? Like how did this enter into your mindset to do this?
Right. Yeah. So I grew up in Atlanta, which isn't very far from the southern terminus of the Appalachian Trail in Dillon. So I spent a lot of time growing up as a kid in the Boy Scouts, a lot of weekends up on the Appalachian Trail. But really, the first time that I was introduced to this was my dad. Man, I was probably like 10 years old. And he said, hey, there's this Appalachian Trail. It goes from Georgia to Maine. It's a couple thousand miles. And would you want to do it one day? I said, yeah. I'm thinking he's talking about the whole thing. I think he was really talking about like 3 or 4 days. So yeah, I was like, yeah, that sounds like an amazing adventure. And one day I do want to do it. And so I ever since then, really, I've wanted to do it when I kind of have that time and space in my life, because it does. I mean, it's hard. It's 5 months talking to a lot of people on the trail. That is really the limiting factor, right? Is just the time. People can do it. I mean, it's hard. It's difficult. Just walking every day and being in the rain and everything. But really, it's the time factor. So I just retired from the Army, and now I've got that time and space right now, and very, very lucky to have supportive family, my wife and my boys, to let me take that time and go do my bucket list.
Oh, we're going to come back to, first of all, thanks for your service. I love this country, and I love patriots like you that defend us and our lifestyle. Brad, wait a minute. So you were in the Army, still typically here. You guys do a lot of left, right, more lefts and more rights. How come you didn't get that out of your system then? 2,200 more miles? I'm confused.
Is right. Yeah. So one of the reasons I think that's the first time I was introduced to it when I was a kid. But really, I wanted to use this time to myself to decompress from the Army. I think that was really important to be able to kind of think about some things that I've done and that I haven't done, or and kind of let that stuff all go. But yeah, it is. I got that question a lot on the trail, and really, when you're not being forced to do something, it can be pretty fun. So that was something that I realized maybe about 800 miles or so in, is that there's no expectations out there. I can get up. I can get up as late as I want to, or start as early and eat whatever I want when I want to. And I mean, I was hungry at times, but it was because I didn't want to carry the food. It wasn't, like something programmed into training, and nobody was forcing me to do anything. So I could get up and walk 5 miles, walk 20 miles, and nobody was there to say yes or no. So which kind of makes it hard too. And when it gets the weather's bad and your feet are wet and you got to put on the wet clothes again in the morning, and it's only you. It's you and the trail. So having that solitude, being just me and the trail. There's other people out there, of course, but that's the way I kind of saw it. It was just me being there, being in nature, and allowing myself to decompress from the military. Okay,
Brad, the Army's tough. There's a reason a lot of us long-haired hippies don't go and do it, because we're not built for it. I want to know what you were built for. Before this, what was the toughest road march, ruck march, hike, whatever you tough guys in the Army would call it? What was the toughest one you've ever done? And I'd like to know where, when, and how you felt about that then.
That was hard, and I thought about it a lot. Yeah, this specific instance that I'll get into. So I started out as a lieutenant. Yeah. I was a fire support officer, so an artillery kind of liaison between the guns and the infantry. But I was out with the light infantry. We did this would have been like maybe spring of 2003 in Hawaii. So on the island of Oahu, back in the Kirkuk training area. We finished up. We were out there for like maybe 10 days or 2 weeks, just living in the jungle and doing our training and everything. And we ended that training with what we refer to. I'm not sure if the battalion commander thought about it this way, but we refer to it as the Gimlet Death March. So we were the 121 infantry gimlets. And I think that thing, it was over 20 miles. I want to say it was maybe 24 miles. Yeah. Walking, roads, and we started basically like at the ocean, the seaside, and then walked inland. So we're walking uphill the whole time. I mean, I couldn't walk for probably a week after that. My feet were torn up. And I'm carrying a lot of weight too, just, probably, 60 or 80 pounds. And just, there's no breaks. There's no, just like, beautiful scenery, but we kind of walked by it. And so that was probably the physically toughest thing that I did before this.
Okay, so now that you've done this, when you look back, do you still feel that was maybe? I don't think that you pushed yourself too hard on this trail, but just the perspective of it all. Is that still going to rank up there as one of the toughest moments?
I think so. But probably the toughest day. The toughest day of hiking. That's probably a top 5. I had some good ones on the Appalachian Trail, especially up in Maine, a little bit in New Hampshire, just because of weather conditions. And really the terrain. So in Hawaii, it was a road march. So it's some gravel, not too bad, but some of the terrain that you encounter in Maine is unbelievable. Even with, I probably hiked, I don't know, maybe 200-300 miles on the Appalachian Trail, kind of down in the south and in North Carolina and Georgia. But up in Maine, it's a completely different animal. You encounter these boulder fields, just like think of boulders like the size of a house and a car and a television and a bowling. It's all just kind of thrown at you, and you just walk straight up this thing. So some days I was hitting maybe 6,000 feet of elevation gain in a day. Probably a couple of days, probably more than that. I stopped counting after a while just because you just walk. It's not going to change anything, right? If if it's going to be hard or easy, it's the trail and need to walk it. So,
I want to go back to one of the things that you mentioned there. I really want to save this family aspect later, but I guess I gotta ask it now. Does there come a point where you're obligated to kind of check in? I don't know if you had a satellite phone or were you forced to check in? Maybe your mate said, okay, once a week. How does that part work? Especially since you said you have a son too. How's that work?
It's right. Yeah, got 2 boys and my wife, and she was. She got worried there at the very beginning. So I think we agreed. We didn't really have an agreement to check in every specific period of time. We didn't have that set. Just kind of as I could. And I planned to unplug a lot more than I actually did. I do regret that a bit. I found myself doom scrolling Instagram at night sometimes. Not what I went out there for. But yeah, I would check in with Christina maybe once a day at least, and a lot of that was driven by the first kind of 10 days. There was a lot of rain, an unusual amount of rain, and up in Maine they don't believe in bridges. So you've got these creeks. It's been raining for 2 or 3 days, and there's a creek and you have to cross it. And I was probably waist to chest deep in some of these creeks.
Wow.
Probably doing some things that, looking back on it, were selfish. Just thinking about my family and the consequences of what could have happened.
Sure.
But I'm still here, so I guess it's okay. But yeah, after that, so that was in the 100-mile wilderness, and cell phone reception there was really spotty. And I actually ended up zapping my phone because I got it in the water. So I couldn't contact my wife, and there were a lot of people very concerned about the conditions. And preparing for this, I knew that Maine was hard and there was going to be water crossings. So I'm at these hard water crossings. I don't know. I just go do them. But the Appalachian Trail community was really concerned for the hikers who were out there. And I had no idea because I didn't have cell phone reception. So once I finally got into town, got a new cell phone and was able to contact my wife, we had an agreement okay, once a day, just let me know you're all right. And I did that as much as I could. There were some spots where cell phone reception was spotty, but yeah, that worked out.
So it's not a competition, Brad. I know you look at me sitting here in this bow tie. For those who are just listening into the audio, I know you're thinking, now that looks like a rugged, manly man. But it's not a competition, Brad. I know you're seeing if you could be as tough as I am. But Brad, when I travel, I travel very heavy. these bow ties got to go with me. There's a bunch of luggage. And you kind of mentioned earlier that you had to make some decisions about carrying food. So, Brad, how did you make the decision on what was going on in your initial rucksack, backpack? I don't even know. What do you call it? What does a trail runner like you even call it?
So it's a backpack that we call it. And what I'm going to refer to now is the base weight. So this is the stuff that we carry that doesn't change. So the weight of the pack itself, the sleeping bag, tent. I carried a tent. Some people didn't. Water filter, like the water bottles, the cook set. I actually carried a bare canister the whole time, which was probably a little bit of overkill, but it's like a hard canister is about this big. That's what I put all my food in. It really took up a lot of space in my pack, but it also made for a good stool. So it was kind of dual purpose. And your clothes, any extra clothes that you have. So all of that I had combined, I think my summer weight was about 21 pounds.
Yeah.
And then you start adding all of the other things that can change. So fuel for your stove, your food, and water. So because it was raining so much in Maine, I didn't have to carry much water. I just carried about a quart with me for that portion when water was readily available. But yeah, the food, I would say the first 5 weeks, I lost 20 or 25 pounds. And, I've almost put it back all on. So I'm not a big guy. So it's thinking about that, like if I want to take, 25 or so weeks to do this, I'm going to be like 80 pounds when I finish. This is unsustainable. So I started packing more food in, which meant more resupplies, but I was probably carrying probably 3 pounds of food per day. They're kind of towards the middle end of this trip. So if I'm going to be out for 4 days, getting close to like 35 pounds pack weight, which is like half of what I was carrying in the Army. So I thought it was great. But talk to some more experienced backpackers, and 35 pounds is way too heavy. So I was probably on the heavier side of things. I'm also on the older side of things, which means I like my comforts. See some of these young kids out there carrying, an extra chair or not carrying a chair, just very, very content just to kind of be as light as possible and as quick as possible. That's not, I wanted to go be comfortable. So.
Brad, you said that you were one of the few people who bring tents. I'm gonna push this back to the young guys. Why wouldn't you have a tent? That's like the first place I think I would start. So it's rare.
So I think I wouldn't. I don't know if it's rare, but the folks I was hiking around were a little bit older too. They tended to carry tents, but some of them they carried a hammock and a tarp, so that'll cut some weight down, and it kind of gives you more options. Honestly, there are a lot of trees on the trail, so it kind of gets you up out of the rocks and roots. And some people don't carry either because you can stay in shelters. So it depends on where you are, but kind of every 5, 10, 15 miles or so, they have these 3-sided lean-tos. So you got a roof and 3 sides. So at least get out of the rain. Yeah. Depending on how it's facing, maybe out of the wind, maybe not. But a lot of people will stay in the shelters. I tended not to because I think I snore. I didn't want to be that guy. Keeping everybody up at night. So I just go crawl off to my tent. So.
Consideration of others, CO2. Well done, Mr. Grant. Okay, so I got to know here. What's the easiest way to say this? I'm just gonna say it. Did you get lost?
There were a few times. I wouldn't say that I was lost. But I was off the trail. Yeah. Right. There were a couple of times. So up in Maine, just the way that the trail is, it's very I'm losing the term right now, but it's a bunch of like pine trees, and the roots are all above ground. There's a lot of moss. You don't have this very well beaten path. And there were some times I kind of veered off, and the trail got a little bit soft, and I hadn't seen a blaze. So that's how they mark the Appalachian Trail, as a white blaze. It's kind of 2 by 5 inches on about eye height on a tree. And I hadn't seen one. And I'm kind of there in the woods, and I don't really see the trail. And I would turn around, and then I actually did see one kind of around back. So I was able to stop myself. There are some spots in New Hampshire that the trail is very poorly marked. Yeah. And you get up on these balds, these just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's just all granite, I believe, but just these rocky balds. And you're enjoying the view, and then all of a sudden, like, you can't find a blaze. So you're kind of wondering which direction to go. But now that I'm thinking about it, this is probably one of the most impactful days on the trail for me. Actually, I sent you a picture of the one where I look absolutely miserable. That was about the end of the day. So
that's the first thing I thought when I saw the pic.
It was a good day. So I started out. It was raining a little bit in the morning, and I knew it was going to rain, so I was trying to get all my stuff packed up before it started raining to keep my sleeping bag and my clothes dry. And got loaded up and started hiking up Bigelow Mountain. It's really the first like tough climb if you're heading southbound, and got up to Little Bigelow, and I got halfway up. Maybe I took a break in the morning, just a little snack break, and it started raining too. So get out of the rain for 20 or 30 minutes, have a little snack. Then I kept walking up the mountain, and I got up to the top of Little Bigelow, which is a flat mountain. The mountaintop is flat. I got up there, had a little snack, looked at the white blaze, had my snack, looked at that white blaze again, and started walking for some reason the opposite direction. And the trail went down. And it went down, and when's this going to level off? And that's the question I was asking myself. When's this going to like level off? And I got all the way back down to that shelter where I took a break. It was like 2 miles. And it was supposed to be a short day too. It was supposed to be like a 12-mile day or something. And I got all the way back down to that shelter. I thought I was in the Twilight Zone, right? Just like, I see the sign pointing to the shelter. I was like, wait, how did this even happen? And so I figured it out. I walked back up the hill, got up to the top, and I saw that blaze that I looked at, and it was a directional blaze. So it was kicking me to the right, and I just missed it. And once I got past that, it was nice and flat. And then up on top of Bigelow Mountain, the winds were like 50 miles an hour and just ran sideways. And it was a fun day. I took a little mental health break the next day. That was one night I stayed in the shelter. I stayed in that shelter 2 nights just to kind of recover and rethink things.
Okay. When you're out there, I'm sure there's a bunch of people, I guess you're carrying a map where, you scouted some things out and you're looking at it and you say, okay, why can't this be a straight line? I got to go this long way to the right or to the left. How many times did you think, man, I'm smarter than this path. I can make my own path? Because it sounded like you might have mentioned that earlier, that you weren't lost. So did that happen? Did you think that you were smarter than the trail and veered off intentionally?
No. And if any of my hiking partners out there see this, I mean, they know I am an absolute purist. I walked by every white blaze. So there's kind of there's some controversy in the thru hiking community about how one should hike the trail. We have a saying called "hike your own hike." And so, at the end of the day, I don't, if you want to take side trails or do your own way, did you hike from Maine to Georgia? Yeah. Okay. That is quite an accomplishment no matter how you do it. But for me personally, I wanted to walk by every white blaze. So no, I didn't, never deviated. That included crossing the creeks when I shouldn't be crossing them, so very strict in my approach. I never really felt like that. And the trail does meander a lot. It's not a straight line from Maine to Georgia. It's not south even. Like even Pennsylvania, it goes from east to west.
What?
It hardly even goes south. But it's the trail, and for me, that's just that's something I can't do anything about. So I don't worry about it. I just say, okay, here's the trail today, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to find something that I like about every day.
I know you wouldn't have the exact, but let's just say 60% of the time you accomplished your goals. It sounded like one time you were saying that it was a light day, so you were only going to do 12 miles that day. So let's just say, when you started, you thought, you know what, I'm averaging 15 miles a day. How many times, what's that percentage of times that you actually made it the distance you were expecting for a day?
I'd say, over 90%.
What?
Yeah. So, but I handicap myself too. So in the beginning, I was only planning on doing like 10-mile days. And so I got in there and I started actually doing more than that. But yeah, I think once I got out of New England and New Hampshire in particular, with the high water and all that, yeah, I was making. Some days I would do more than I expected. But yeah, as I would say, almost all the time. But sometimes just weather conditions would slow me down. There were a couple of times up in Maine and New Hampshire where the trail was just too hard, and I had to scale it back. But it's when you're only carrying 4 days worth of food, it's pretty easy to make that next food stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. It may not be easy, but you've got pretty good motivation.
You mentioned a little bit about the sites. I used to live in Boston, Mass for a while. I did some motorcycle riding up into Maine, and I always like to take anyone that's never been in New England in that area to see maple syrup trees. Did you have any experiences, one with that? And then the second question I'd like you to answer is, what impressed you? Like, what was that one moment? If it wasn't the maple trees, like, what was the thing that impressed you? So those are the two questions.
Thanks. Yeah, those are great questions. I did have experience with the maple trees, and the first time I saw it, I didn't know what it was. Like I actually have a degree in forestry, so I know maple trees. Yeah. And when I was in Virginia, Vermont, I did have I recognized I was hiking through maple plantations, I guess.
Yeah.
They still had their leaves on the trees and everything, and but I saw these. It looked like it was like fenced off, but once I got close to it, there were hoses connecting all the taps together, yes. And I guess it ran down to a collection point, and so yeah. I thought that was pretty cool to be able to see. This is where they're making the maple syrup. So yeah,
yeah.
So
and then what was the one thing you remember saying to yourself, man, this is beautiful? Like, I'm curious of that.
Yeah, I think it was right at peak leaf season. I was up on Max Patch, so this is just north of the Smoky Mountains a little bit.
Okay.
In North Carolina, and it was just a really special day. Because I was it was the only backpacking trip that I ever quit. It was with my dad. I think I was like 17 years old or so, and we were in Hot Springs, and this was like 1997 or something. We were in Hot Springs. We were supposed to go up to Max Patch. We'd been hiking for a couple of days, and it was cold, and the mountains are tough up there. It's surprisingly difficult. Just looking at it, it's not the Sierra, it's not the Rockies, right? But it's difficult terrain, and we were just getting beat up. Didn't have our trail legs, and we got a hot lunch in Hot Springs. And that was it. So we decided it was time to go home. But this time I was going to do it. I stopped in Hot Springs and had my hot lunch, and I kept walking. And I made it to Max Pass. So this is one of these bald areas. And I could see the Smoky Mountains off in the distance. But really, the way I described it, it's like I was walking in a picture. It was beautiful fall colors, and the weather was just amazing that day too. Wow. And walking towards the Smokies and being able to see all the leaves and really to see the ridgeline where I was going to be hiking in a couple of days.
Yeah.
That really made a big impression on me. That was probably one of my favorite kind of spots on the trail for me.
All right. There's a bunch of city slickers that are going to be listening to this out of curiosity. Oh, by the way, you're not the only person I know with an undergrad in forestry. Shout out to Aaron Carpenter. He can't wait for me to upload this. So this is going up tonight.
Okay. Cool.
Brad, I don't think he's listening to any of my other podcasts. I told him about you, and he's going to beat my door down. For the city slickers, I know that they automatically believe that you came across 4 meth labs and about 10 or 12 moonshine. I don't even know what they're called. Moonshine hooches.
Stills. Yeah.
What say you?
No, none of that. I came across some people who partook in organic mind-altering substances. But yeah, nothing like that. I mean, the trail is really, you meet some interesting folks out there, but most everybody is, you wouldn't recognize them as being any different if you saw them on the street. But yeah, you do meet some interesting folks out there. But it's very safe. I mean, hikers are, all of us to an extent are out there just to be out in nature, meet some other people and do some difficult things. Just challenge ourselves. But yeah, never saw any meth labs or anything. Yeah, but it's some of the towns, you can tell it's the socioeconomic factors there. It's definitely having an impact.
Yeah.
So, some poor areas, but just beautiful, man. It's, I hope when I was in Asheville, which is kind of a well-to-do area, but there's tons of poor areas around there. And I was thinking, it's like, man, I hope the people who live here understand and appreciate just how beautiful this is. Yeah. It's just a beautiful area of the country, and and people are making do with what they have. But at least when you wake up in the morning, you're in the mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You being a gentleman of a forestry background, as I already mentioned, you get out there. Can you get distracted? Like, can you actually say, wow, sorry, I don't have a forestry background. That's a pine tree. That's a Brad tree. I'm just making it up.
Yeah.
Can you enjoy it, or you were so focused? I mean, it sounds like you enjoyed some of the views here and there, but could you enjoy it? Could you geek out?
Yes, absolutely. Oh. So yeah, so boreal pine forest is what I was thinking of in Maine. That's it's kind of an alpine cold weather environment. It's very different from the pine forest that we have down south. Oh. So that was fun, but I'm not super familiar with that because I went to school at Auburn and I learned about loblolly and longleaf pines that we have down here in the south. So I wasn't able to really identify, but I remember coming into. Well, 2 things I remember when coming into Massachusetts. Yeah, I saw that's where it changed from this kind of a boreal environment to more of a pine oak mix, which is what I'm used to. So that's when I started identifying the black cherries. Starting to see more maple trees, and the one tree that I saw that really struck me was an American chestnut. So they died off. Really kind of stunted growth. years ago. They used to be just these majestic trees, almost like the redwoods out west.
Whoa.
And they all died off. And they have really stunted growth. So the tallest one I had seen kind of growing up in the Southeast was maybe like waist high. And I saw one that was like 12 feet tall. So they're starting to recover from this blight. The stunts their growth. And I saw some that were, maybe like 4 inches around, kind of in Virginia. So that was one tree that I identified that I thought was really cool. And then when I got down to Virginia, I remember seeing my first sourwood tree. It's just this is the really nerdy forestry part of me is I will rip those leaves off and eat them because it tastes like it's like a Sour Patch Kid. Just kind of something to do. It's a sour wood, but the taste of the leaves is sour as well. So you can kind of chew on those as you go. And but absolutely, I was identifying trees. Tripped a couple of times because I was getting distracted.
That's when you're into it. So
right,
I'm with you on that. Man, that's so cool. All right. Let's get to clothing. Let's get to hygiene. And this is where I lose him. Up until now, he was enjoying the time. But he's like, come on. But you had to know this was coming. So the first thing, the clothing. How many pairs of boots did you go through?
I went through, I ended up with 5 pairs of boots. So Pennsylvania alone accounted for one of those. And the start kind of through the Maine and the White Mountains in New Hampshire, that ate another pair. So I went through 5 pairs of boots total. And some of those rocks it was like take chunks out of the sole. It was pretty extreme.
Okay. I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I'm a city boy. Brad, what's the best daggone boot then? Like what did you settle on as your boot of choice? So
I the whole time I used Merrell Moabs. They're kind of a 3/4 boot. And again, I'm an old guy, my feet hurt. So I was odd in that I wore boots. And this is what I'd say. Almost nobody wears boots when they're through hiking the trail. They will wear trail runners. And those, for me, just don't offer support. And the soles are not thick enough to get over those rocks. But the theory is that they dry out fast. So you're always going to, at some point, you're going to encounter rain or creek crossings on the trail. So my disadvantage, it took my boots a while to dry out. But if you're in a trail runner, it's almost instantly when it dries out.
Brad, don't you have to protect your ankles? I play pickup basketball a couple times a week. I wear high tops. I don't get it. Don't you got to protect the ankles?
That was my thinking too. So even from just actually like impacting the rocks when you get in there and you slide off a rock and you hit another one. Or for me, a little bit clumsy, like at my trekking poles, I bang my feet every now and then. So I can't imagine being a trail runner. But people do it. And I don't know. I guess part of the theory too is it's a lighter shoe. So, so when you're moving your legs, it's moving less weight. And when you're taking 5 million steps, hiking 2,000 miles, I guess it adds up after a while.
Oh my God. I didn't even realize that. Man, 5 million steps is about the total of what you did there.
That's what they say. Yeah, I didn't count. But I think that's the kind of the general theory is that when you hike it, you're taking about 5 million steps.
All right. I'm gonna pull back to the clothing. All right. So you started out with an assortment of clothes. Did you go through all of that stuff and then had to stop and buy new stuff for the remainder of your time? How'd that go?
I did, yeah. So I started off with, so I had my hiking set of clothes. So it was I think, what was it, like a nylon shirt. So it's a synthetic shirt, nylon pants, hiking pants, which a lot of people hike in shorts too. I don't like it because I don't like all the the leaves and stuff brushing on my legs.
Sure.
One pair of socks that I would wear, and then I had like a kind of a cold weather running shirt just in case it got cold, and I had a down puffy jacket, rain gear. I don't remember wearing my rain pants actually on the trail ever, but the rain jacket I would wear sometimes. So that's what I would wear. And then I had a sleeping set of clothes too, just to kind of keep my sleeping bag, because that stuff gets like gross, all muddy and sweaty. So at night I would change into my sleeping clothes, which was essentially a set of long johns and a pair of socks. So I had that's kind of what I carried in my pack every day. I did change out my hiking clothes. It was the same thing essentially, but I just dropped a size because I was losing weight. So I went from a medium shirt to a small, and then a 34 to a 32 to a 30-inch waist on my pants. Went through a couple pair of socks. And then when it started getting colder, I upgraded my my long underwear for my sleeping.
Sure.
So yeah, I guess I actually I replaced every piece of clothing that I had, except for the puffy jacket. The puffy jacket survived.
All right. I think as we talk, I see it. You didn't want to admit to it. Here's the theory I've already worked out. You were in Maine at a casino. You went into a negative amount of money. The mafiosos were after you. And that's why you started to hike your way home. That's how you lost them. Am I close? Am I any?
Yeah, it's all those funny. I mean, you're from Boston, right? So I mean, all that kind of that scene that flows through the Northeast, and really, it was I got in bad with the lobster guys. It's when you're dealing with a mafia, like a lobster roll isn't something you want to eat. So I don't want to be part of the lobster roll. So
that's good. That's awesome. Oh yeah. So that almost brings me to a point where it doesn't sound like you had a chance to get coastal, right? You're inland the whole time, but any lakes, any amazing rivers that you came across that some of us may have heard of, may not understand that you kind of went across? I mean, I don't mind looking ignorant here. Like, we know about the mighty Mississippi, but was there anything there that you liked, that you saw?
Sure, yeah. I mean, starting off in Maine, just when I did have a view from those mountaintops, and walking by ponds and lakes, there's so much water in Maine.
Wow.
That was really, really amazing. But the first really kind of famous river that you cross is in Maine, and it's the Kennebec. So famous for, like Kennebec Port, where the presidents go to take their, but that's down on the coast, right? So we're way far inland, but the Kennebec is really a great whitewater river. So I'm told. I didn't get to experience that, but that's a neat river crossing. It's the only part of the trail where you can't walk it. And they have a canoe that comes to take you across, and they actually have a white blaze painted on the front of that canoe. So you're still on the trail. So for guys like me who only want to walk by the white blazes, so to get us in that canoe instead of, because I mean that's a deep river. It's got current. I mean, when it's low, it's like kind of shoulder high. So and there's a dam upstream, so that they don't want people getting in that water. So there's a guy comes out from fairly early in the morning until the afternoon. And he'll ferry you across the river.
How long are you on that canoe?
Oh, it's a couple of minutes, so maybe like 5 minutes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a good sized river, but yeah, not crazy, not a lot of time. So that one, so probably the next time. I'm probably missing something here, but apologies to everybody from the Northeast. But the Shenandoah River. That in Harper's Ferry, which is a very historical town too.
Yes,
with old John Brown there, and that's one of the best views, I think. And it was super misty, looking over the Potomac. So depending on how you do it, I crossed it 2 different days, but I crossed the Potomac, hit Harper's Ferry, then I crossed the Shenandoah, and all kind of within about 5 miles. Yeah, and walk down the Shenandoah Valley. And yeah, I guess I'm probably missing something again here in Virginia because we spent about 500 miles in Virginia.
Yeah.
But I got to mention the Chattahoochee, just being from Georgia originally.
Oh yeah.
And there it's just this very small spring that comes out. It's the headwaters of the Chattahoochee. It just is this little trickle that comes out from under a rock, and that's where that river starts.
Wow. I mean that sounds cool just in itself. I'll take your word for it. I might look it up, but just to know that's the headwaters is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I've spent a lot of time down in Georgia, so that's cool. Now I'm not even sure. You named a couple big landmarks. Any amazing bridges that you kind of went across, and you're like, this is a beautiful bridge. I'm thinking like up in the Northeast, you got what do they call like house bridges? It looks like a garage is on top of a bridge. Any cool bridges?
Is it right? Yeah. What is that? I think it's the Connecticut River that runs between New Hampshire and Vermont. Across that one, I would say that one not like you're talking about, not like one of these covered bridges.
There it is.
Didn't cross any of those, but yeah, a really aesthetically pleasing kind of from afar. It's got a bunch of arches and kind of got some gold adornments on it. I did like that one. Not a particularly pleasant bridge. I think it's I-88 that crosses, but crossing the Delaware as another, kind of famous river that I forgot to cross.
Yes, it is.
Yes, between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So coming out of New Jersey into Pennsylvania across that. Yeah, again, not a super aesthetically pleasing bridge, but that river, it was cool to cross that.
Hey, you just helped the rest of us. Those of us who want to avoid those tolls on I-95 when they're in that Delaware corridor.
Yeah.
Brad's got the back roads there.
Yeah.
Get around those toll booths.
Yeah. So there was a suspension bridge. It was in Pennsylvania. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was really, I've got my pictures. I might be able to pull it up here, but yeah, it was really, across a few suspension bridges.
Talking about
and that was neat.
Yeah,
and a lot of them are built for the hikers. It's not like there were old bridges that took cars or on them or anything. The local hiking clubs funded that and built a bridge to get us over those dangerous water crossings.
Wow.
So maybe the folks in Maine are taking notes. I don't know.
When will they organize?
Those are right.
to help guys out. How tall are you, Brad?
I'm 5'9".
Oh, you're not that tall. Like,
no,
you're 6'6". You're 6'7".
Thanks. Yeah. I went to school on a forestry scholarship, not basketball. So.
Yeah. See. No, because when you said that you were in waters, I'm 5'5". I can round up to 5'6" because I'm 5'5.5". But sheesh, you lost me when you were saying chest high waters. Nope. There's a height requirement for this trail.
It's right. Yeah. And I would say that was some very, very unusual conditions that we had to go through. And it was really for a very short period of time. It just happened to be when I was up there. But yeah, usually like those creeks, when they get up to like waist high, that's high. Yeah. But yeah, getting into belly and chest is really, really extreme. Folks were saying there's been nothing like that in the last 20 years. Most time when you hit in the summer, like you don't even get your feet wet. And a lot of these creeks, you can just rock hop across the river and you don't even have to get your feet in the water. But yeah, that was. It's not the case for me. Maybe if I'd waited a couple of days, let the water go down, I would have had a safer experience. But yeah, I think that's. I don't want to scare anybody off. It's very unusual conditions. So most of the time, it's much easier.
Okay, now I got to go back to another one of these questions that I know you're going to cringe when I ask, but hey, this is the expose. For listeners, I told Brad this is going to be, this is a layup kind of a podcast. Here's the hard-hitting stuff. Brad, who's the most colorful or memorable person you came across on that trail?
It was Scuba Steve. It was Scuba Steve. Steve ran into him late, kind of in Southern Virginia. And this guy was just a character. Just didn't care. I mean, just like in a very like good way, in a funny way. Just absolutely didn't care what people thought about him, and it would just a funny guy. I mean, very, very colorful, but very nice. I mean, just one of the nicest guys I met. And but he was always kind of getting himself into little situations. So I was with a couple other guys, Step and Moses. We were in Parisburg, Virginia, and we were actually on our way to a Church of Christ picnic because, it had been a while since we went to church and we were hungry. So we loaded up in the car and went over and we took a 0 day. So all these days I was out hiking, I took a few days off. Sure. Just where I hiked, I intended to hike 0 miles. So a 0 day. We went over to this church picnic and look around the corner. It's like, there's Scuba Steve walking down the road. Like, that's not where the trail goes. So we grabbed him up and it's like, hey man, guess what? You're coming to church with us. And so yeah, we got him. And I tell you that we got him in the car and he was telling us a story about what happened last night. And he came in, so from Army experience, right? We use red lights, and we use red lights on the trail too, just because you can kind of preserves your night vision, and it's more considerate to other people. So if you're around, and when we're out there, we encounter all sorts of people, right? So there's through hikers like us who will hike all 2,200 or so miles. And then you have some section hikers, so folks who will be out, maybe for a weekend, maybe a week, maybe a month, and then you have the day hikers. So you get section hikers camping with us, and Scuba Steve came in one night with his white light late. It's after dark. He's got his white light on. I think Scuba Steve thinks that he's alone, and so Scuba Steve is telling us a story. And he's like, yeah, I'm shining my light and I see these tents and I'm sitting on my tent and, it's late and everything. And this section hiker comes out and just starts to yelling at me. He was cussing at him. He's like, turn off your white light, just like we're trying to sleep over here. We had heard that same story from some thru hikers an hour before that. But it was those section hikers who were telling us the story about Scuba Steve, and they knew it was Scuba Steve. And so, so after church, we kind of brought the two parties together and let them work it out. Yeah. So it was, that was a memorable moment. And then, it kind of got rough with him a little bit, but as we called him stinging the policeman. It was like, hey, dude, Roxanne, you don't have to put on a red light. That kind of became a moniker for him. And he was a good sport to let us kind of ride that out.
Let's back up, Brad. Did you just say you were either leading or following Moses through the wilderness?
Right. Yeah. Yes. So off to church. So a funny story about Moses. So because of my experience in the 100-mile wilderness, crossing these creeks, I couldn't tell my wife what I was actually doing right when I called her. So I told her I just parted the waters.
Yes. I can see that.
So yeah,
With Moses.
yeah. So I took the trail named Moses,
Okay.
and then about a week into that, I was at a hostel where they was the Maine Roadhouse. So they take a Polaroid of all the thru hikers who come through, and I saw this other guy Moses who was like a week ahead of me.
Uh-huh.
And and I just like chosen to go by the trail named Moses. Like, oh man, now there's this. So for like 1,500 miles, I would meet people and they say, oh yeah, I met another Moses too. It's like, well, I want to be the first Moses. So I got to pass this guy at some point. And, but it became, a little bit, like logistically challenging. And actually Pearisburg, where we went to church, I called to make a reservation at that hostel. And they said, oh yeah, Moses, yeah, you're coming in on this. It's like, no, different Moses. So I had to like go by another name. So I started going by Chopped Moses. I had these big mutton chops. So I let him keep because he was the original Moses. So I started going by Chopped Moses.
Yeah.
Just to differentiate. But yeah, I was hiking with Moses in the wilderness for a good while there. And he was cool. An awesome guy, super laid back. And he brought with him like a ram's horn, like they called a shofar.
Oh.
And he would blow that thing, get up on a nice vista and kind of down the valleys and hit the shofar. And it was an amazing sound to hear. Yeah, I miss that. That's actually one of the things of the trail I miss is hearing that. So
I know that. Sorry, we're in the last few minutes here. We may have to do a part 2. I mean, you can't get 2,200 miles in 1 hour here. So that's a threat to you, Mr. Brannon. But
no, it's an opportunity, man. Yeah, bring it. Yeah.
Sheesh, I still have so much more. But okay, are you now at a point where you're okay with maybe even admitting there was some regret during the trail? I'm not saying you're a quitter, but was there a point where you're like, crap, this was a bad idea, or never again? At least you said it at that moment. Did that ever happen?
I would say not regret, but a feeling of doom that I wouldn't be able to do it. So I thought about quitting early on when I was up in Maine. So there was about 30 days there in a row where I was hiking in wet boots.
Yeah.
Just think about the having to get up every morning and put on wet socks and put on those boots. And I'd get them dried out sometimes, but then the next day I have to cross a creek, like a knee-high creek. Nothing too crazy at that point. But yeah, so and just it really did some pretty good damage just to the skin on my feet. Yeah. And it made it very painful to walk. And it rained, it wasn't raining all the time, but it rained every, 3 days or so. And, it was just hard. And the terrain was hard. I was walking over roots and like slipping, dangerous conditions, wet, slippery. And I really thought, is like, can I do this anymore? Yeah. And it was really nice. Actually, my best man and his wife came up. It just kind of happened to be that they were up in Maine, kind of when I was in Maine, and they wanted to visit. And I made a stop that I wasn't planning on making. So I pulled into Bethel, Maine, and took about 12, 18 hours off the trail that I wasn't planning on doing. And my body and my mind needed that. So I wouldn't say at no point did I regret what I was doing, but I mean, really thinking about like, should I still be out here doing this? Because I don't know if I can. That definitely hit, maybe 200-300 miles in. But yeah, I got my spirits up and my feet in a better condition, not completely, but better. And I was able to keep going after that. And after that, like I never really is after I crossed Mount Washington. So Mount Washington has some of the worst weather in the United States. I think it's the second highest peak on the trail. It's over 6,000 feet. And being able to summit that and knowing that it's one of the hardest things to do on the trail. And then after that, I was like, there's absolutely nothing that could stop me. Yeah. And it was all fun and games after that.
I'll have 2 questions left, Brad. This has been amazing. I'm geeking out. I know Aaron's going to geek out. And then, I even hope that some of your peers that you either met or your acquaintances, I'm very curious of their thoughts on this too. So we'll need to keep in touch. I'd love to hear their feedback. Okay, so when you get to the end, this is the first question. When you get to the end, do you start to quicken the pace? Do you get a little impatient? Or do you slow down because you could see the end? You're over the mountaintop. That was an intentional pun there. And you just kind of just want to slow down and enjoy these last 100 miles or 80 miles. Which one of the two?
I would so I did see a lot of my I wouldn't say a lot. I mean, I think that there were some people who kind of kept the same pace, but there's definitely an urgency to get done. For me, I wanted to finish with my family. So I actually finished with my mom and dad came out and my wife and 2 boys came out. And we had, because they're in school and they work and stuff, so it had to be on a weekend. And my boys actually run cross country too, so it had to be on kind of a specific date that we had lined up. So November 12th was that day. So that's the day that I wanted to finish, and so that was good for me because I couldn't go any faster, and really it forced me to slow down because I probably could have finished a week. Or maybe even sooner before I finished. But that really forced me to, or I shouldn't say force, it gave me that opportunity to slow down and really enjoy. I was there in the fall. I was hiking through the fall for since September 3rd. So it was like a full half of the trail, half of my time on the trail. I was hiking through the fall. So getting to experience that in Georgia and through the Smokies and just taking my time, and I don't think I took any days off, but I took some short days. Definitely took some short days through Georgia, spending nights at places where I'd been before and kind of revisiting those old places, and really taking that time just a little bit of extra time to sit on those mountaintops and really enjoy it.
Last question. I always ask the guests, you've been an amazing one. This has been intriguing. I believe in 6 degrees of separation. And so, Brad, I always ask, who's the most interesting person that you know, and what will you do to help me get them on this podcast? They don't have to be famous. They don't have to be rich. I said interesting. And your definition of interesting.
Most interesting person I know.
I like it.
Sorry. Yeah. I know a bunch of interesting people. So,
if you didn't have one ready that you got to kind of whittle through them, I like that.
Man. Who would I say? Man, I want to say Dan Robinson.
Who's
that guy. He's an army buddy of mine who I served in Thailand with. He's actually one of these Hunts Vegas people too. So just a great family guy. Loves his country, and he's always doing something kind of wild. So yeah.
Oh. You got me there. So that second part of that's, what will you do? Will you put in a word? Will you implore them that, hey man, I think you should have a little conversation with Donato? What will you do to help me?
Well, I can send him this podcast here.
Sure.
I definitely plan on sharing this with people I know. So, I mean, sharing this, letting him know, because he knows me, like I'm an introvert. So I'm surprised, honestly, that I've been able to talk for an hour. He is the yin to my yang. So he's a talker. So knowing that even I can do something like this, I think he'll embrace that. But yeah, just he's got some great stories to tell, and he's doing some great things, supporting the community up there. So, if I can give him letting, this is an opportunity to let a wider audience know what you're doing.
Sure.
And kind of promote those good activities that he's doing.
Dan the Man Robinson. It sounds like I wanted to do a marathon pod. I think I could do it. I'm talking to a guy who did 5 million steps. But if I had to do a 2 hour and I break it up into a couple episodes, it sounds like Dan the Man Robinson is the one. You said he's a talker.
Yeah.
Two talkers together, and we're going to run.
He'll run it. So, yeah.
Looking forward to that. Brad, this was so awesome. Like, I'm trying to be respectful and get off here. You haven't heard the last of me, Brad Brannon. We're not done here. I might want to just bring you back with Aaron Carpenter, my forestry guy, and I just would like to just lob some stuff at the both of you, and then see you guys nerd it out, do some stuff, and then like add some more. I would love to. That would be a really cool thing for me with you two, because this is, those people that send pictures of cats, those people who whip out the pictures of their kids, especially to the single people who don't care. I do that with Aaron. I send him pictures of trees that I'm sure he knows about, but who else can you send it to?
That's right.
Yeah. I'm going to go look up sourwood. That sounds so amazing. I'm looking that up.
I'm not sure if you guys have them out in Texas, but if you're out, kind of in the east, southeast part of it, they're all over the place. So, yeah. Hey,
thanks for coming on, everyone. That's Brad Brannon. I don't know how we were lucky enough to get him. I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. Please like, subscribe, share. This is a story that has to be told. Thanks again, Brad. This was fun.
Good. Yeah. Thanks, Donato. Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Great. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. Yeah.
Wow.